Welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. Our team's goal is to present science-based information about gardening and all things nature in New York's Hudson Valley. Hosts Jean and Tim, along with team members Teresa and Linda, are master gardener volunteers for New York's Columbia and Greene counties. So if you're interested in gardening or nature, or nuggets of information about what's happening outside your door, settle in. Enjoy the conversation. Whatever the season, we have something to say.
Hi, I'm Tim Kennelty.
And I'm Jean Thomas.
And welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley.
We're back with part 2 of our conversation with Avalon and Eli about habitat restoration in the Hudson River estuary watershed. Here goes.
So I have another question. Maybe mine's a third grade question too. I think mine's a seventh grade question, actually, Jane. But some people might not have this information, but there are pollinators that are specific, right? They only will take the pollen and nectar from specific plants. So are those some of the ones that are at risk because the plant is?
So specialist pollinators, that's a great question. And there are a lot of species of insect that specialize on a certain species of plant. And that can mean different things. I kind of define it as they need that plant present on the landscape to complete their life cycle. So it might mean they have a specialized nose parts that can only nectar on a certain flower. It could also mean they need a certain woody species to live in for their habitat, or it could mean a combination of both. And one thing that Doug Tallamy, who I'm sure everyone knows, says that is really obvious, but I really like, is plant for the specialists, not for the generalists, because a generalist pollinator can get food or habitat from a larger number of species of plants. So if every plant you plant has a specialized pollinator associated with it, then you will get both those specialists and you will also get the generalists, because the generalists can use more things. So we don't only target specialist pollinators in the Pollinate Now design toolkit, but we do have a number of not just bees, but moths and other things that fall into that specialist category. And we will have plant associations for each of those. So the design toolkit is going to be both like a beautiful landscape design toolkit that you can take into your backyard and plot out, here's what I need to plant a foot apart from this other thing, and it's going to look beautiful, and here's how it's going to look when it's done. It will also have these really extensive plant lists that will have a whole pollinator section where it'll have the common name, the species name of each plant that we're recommending for the Hudson Valley bioregion, as well as every pollinator that those plants support and how. So some plants support pollinators in multiple different ways. They can provide pollen to one guy and nectar to the next guy, and the third guy makes their home in the stem of that plant. And all of that will be laid out in our toolkit plant list, which I'm really excited about.
And it's going to be something that I assume at some point in time is going to be accessible to, home gardeners, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's a huge part of it. Doug Tallamy, again, if you've seen his presentations, has incredible statistics on the smallest home gardens, like these tiny little urban plots in Chicago surrounded by nothing but concrete. And like 1 or 2 plants of a certain species can really have a significant impact on bringing our pollinator populations back. So these toolkits are definitely designed to be accessible by home gardeners. I kind of think of them as made of building blocks or puzzle pieces. So for example, for Eli and my site, we're going to have the whole big design with a whole GIS map of our 100 acres, and it'll say what goes where and how many, if we have a 300-foot hedgerow, that'll be like a 50-foot repeat within that hedgerow. And anybody can take that 50-foot hedgerow building block and plant it along their driveway, or even a 10-foot building block, or even a 5-foot square. And there will certainly be a plant prioritization section where if you only have a little bit of space, no problem at all. Here are some things you can plant. Some goals that we have are the more plants you can plant, of course, the better, because who doesn't want to plant more plants? And also you'll have a longer growing season, or you'll have a longer season of bloom. So having more species diversity means you'll have more things blooming at every point in the season, which is really important for pollinators. You'll be able to support a greater diversity of pollinators, and you'll also be able to have that spread between woody plants that are important for habitat and pollen plants and nectar plants. But really, there's no bad or wrong scale for this work. You can scale this way down. You can scale this down to a container. And the designs will allow for that, and we'll have like mini designs called out that any homeowner can use at whatever scale. And it'll also show you what's the best design for your site. So if you're a wet zone, then here's your best design. If you're a upland, rocky, sunny, dry, bare spot that doesn't get any like rain all summer, like none of us got last summer, then here's your design. And it'll also be scale uppable.
I love the scale down, though. I mean, because usually people are talking about scaling up, and if you have just a small yard, you want it to be scaled down. You don't want some huge, intricate plan. You want something that you can plant.
Yeah.
Right?
The other thing, and I don't know, I'm sure that a lot of folks who are listening are probably master gardeners or masterful gardeners in their own right and already have beautiful gardens that they don't just want to like rip up and start afresh. So I'm really excited about developing like a plant this, not that section. So if you have a gap in your garden where you would have put a peony, although I love peonies and I have a lot of them, try this instead. It'll have the same kind of form, the same bloom time, just like native swap-ins as you're adapting existing gardens.
Can I order my copy now?
Yeah, when is it going to be available? We're all salivating now.
Ooh.
Give us
We want to
It
know.
doesn't have to be an
Yeah.
exact date, but I assume that you have a plan for essentially when it's going to be accessible to people like us.
Yeah. So we kind of have gone back and forth on this question. At first we thought, we'll release the whole design right away. Our designer is going to complete his design work and then we'll make it available to the public, and the whole toolkit will be like tied up in a bow and everybody can have it this spring. And then the installations at the actual anchor sites will happen in fall 2023. So design first and then proof later.
That's dangerous.
That's dangerous. So we then thought, well, we'll wait. We'll wait for the whole thing. We'll do the installations in the fall. And that way we'll be able to have a toolkit that includes, here's what our design was. Here's how we had to adapt that design based on what plants we could actually source, what was missing, what site prep we could do. Is there going to be another insane drought? Are there going to be budget considerations that need to change? Because we think that information will be really valuable to people as they go to adapt this in their backyard. So then we thought, okay, we'll do the installations in fall 2023, and maybe we'll release the toolkit in fall 2024. And then we thought, gosh, that's a long time. And there's so much that will be done that will be so valuable that will be available sooner. So now we're kind of taking a hybrid approach, and we're actually going to be putting out a call for what I'm tentatively calling beta testers for the designs this spring. Yeah.
You haven't seen Jean's garden. She's raising her hand, but it's, I don't know if you want her garden or not. It's
we want everybody's garden.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Yeah. So we're going to release just the designs themselves, along with, and I want to make sure I mention this, the designs will also come with a site prep plan and a maintenance plan. So, a meadow, if you are intending to install a meadow, there will be a mowing schedule attached to that design in the toolkit. Or if you want to put in a hedgerow, there will be instructions for how to smother with a tarp or till it.
If you're a beta gardener, do you have to sign an oath?
Not an oath. So the way that we're thinking that the beta testing will work is that we will provide the designs, and I want to emphasize this is all free of charge. We're a nonprofit. This is not a get rich quick scheme for anybody.
The pyramid scheme.
No.
Right?
Well, you can sign up on our website, which I'm sure you guys will put a link to our
absolutely.
website, and then you will receive. It'll have a question like, what's your site type? You'll have to just fill in a little bit about what your goals are and your garden that you're planning to grow in. Then you'll receive a digital copy of the design toolkit, which will just be small. It'll be the design for the anchor site that best fits your site, and then it will have all of the little smaller building block mini designs attached and blown up and with their individual plant lists and everything else, and the site prep and the maintenance plan. And then you don't have to sign an oath, but we do ask a little, just feedback at the end. Tell us, what did you do with this? Hopefully you'll take some pictures. Did you end up making any garden decisions based on this toolkit? What did they look like? If you went to buy plants based on this plant list, where did you go? Who did you find that had a lot of these plants? Was there anything that you could not find? Was there anything that you felt could be done differently for a home gardener? Because really the goal of this toolkit is that it is a tool. We want it to be able to be used, and our designer does just exquisitely gorgeous design work, and we want to include, in addition to all those beautiful designs that you're going to see, which I'm so excited to show, we want to show like the real plan for the shovel when you have the design in one hand and the shovel in your other hand. We want it to be a real functional.
I like that you're doing site preparation, because the question that people always ask me is like, how do I get started? And, do I have to dig? Do I have to double dig? What do I have to do? So that's great. But what about sourcing? Because that's the other question I get is, okay, you're including this pretty interesting looking plant that I've never seen before. Where do I find it? So are you going to include source lists, or how does somebody deal with finding those plants?
Yeah, so in the final version of the toolkit, because we're sort of doing the work at the same time, that's why the design release this spring is just a beta test, because we won't be able to have, exactly where all of our anchor site holders found all their plants. But the idea is definitely in the final version to have a nursery source list, and we're actively reaching out to a number of nurseries to understand, what kind of things that they're growing, what their propagation protocols are. Would they be interested to grow some of the things on this list that might be a little more obscure? And I really, really encourage, if any nursery folks are listening to this, to reach out to us on our website, because we would love to know about the work that you're doing and what you're growing. So we will have a nursery source list, and also eventually a dream of mine is to have like a network of site work professionals and landscape professionals, because not everybody, the reality is not everybody's doing their own garden. We have a lot of second homeowners in the Hudson Valley. There's the potential to really spread this work through the trades, and I really want to get those folks connected in.
Avalon, you're Ecological Projects Manager at Partners for Climate Action. What is the Partners for Climate Action?
So Partners for Climate Action is a relatively new organization, now headquartered in Chatham, New York, but we serve mainly six counties: Columbia, Dutchess, Ulster, Greene, Putnam, and Orange. Our mission is pretty simple. We remove barriers to ecological action in the bioregion of the Hudson River. And so we do a lot of different programs around removing those barriers to action. One of our main programs is actually not really in the garden or the environment space specifically. It's a training program for municipal volunteers called Local Champions, and we help folks who are interested in stepping up and joining their Climate Smart Communities task force get the certifications that they need, navigate the state websites, get funding, get resources to take action like at the town and village level. And that's something that it's kind of tough. I don't know, I certainly never learned in school how to be a municipal volunteer or how to get into my town board or anything. But Eli and I both now sit on the Conservation Advisory Council. Eli is the chair. But we found it was easier than we thought to get involved and easier than we thought to make an impact. And it's just something that we've found to be really rewarding. So Partners for Climate Action encourages all of that type of action, and we're here to support folks who are interested in doing that. So
you're like an ombudsman for activists, connecting and coordinating the volunteers with the things that they can do that they didn't know about.
Yeah, that program is pretty specific. That program helps folks get to Climate Smart Community Bronze status, which opens up a lot of funding and opportunities at the town level.
Well, for example, Partners for Climate Action hosted a Columbia County-wide Conservation Advisory Council meeting last fall where they got all the CACs together in one room, went through what the challenges are, barriers to entry, and what folks are working on and what overlap there is and how partnerships might come together.
And I think that's great, because I think that's one of the big challenges is I'm on my town's CAC, I'm seeing a huge amount of interest in this topic, but people not really knowing how to best, volunteer or how to best get involved or how the towns work together even. So I think that's great. And, if someone's listening and they think, oh, I don't have much of a yard, but I want to do something, going to your town's CAC is a really good way to just understand how involved the town is. And if they're not that involved, get involved yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can make a lot of impact at the town level.
It's surprising, right? It's surprising,
Yeah.
I think. And there's some people who are very, very energized. And you meet people who have kind of like interest, and I think it's a really good thing to do.
On the topic of removing barriers to action, one major obvious barrier to action is funding. So we do things like we work with the state to provide educational webinars on how to access and navigate all of the state funding. But also, we have our own funding program, which rolled out for the first time this year, the Ecological Restoration Grant Program, which I also manage. And we just sent a total of $364,000 to 17 total projects. And those are a wide range of organizations, everything from those municipal conservation advisory council type groups that we were talking about, to major nonprofits, to faith-based institutions, schools, and libraries. And there's a lot of really great ecological restoration work, including a lot of pollinator work that's going to come out of those grant projects this year.
That's cool. Very cool.
Also have our Library of Local program. We have sustainability learning centers in 16 public libraries in the region. And we also have monthly educational sessions on a whole wide variety of things. We just had a climate expert. We'll have a pollinator expert soon. And those are always changing. So definitely encourage folks to see what's next on our website.
So I have a question kind of goes to the end of this. So I'm a landowner, I'm a homeowner, I'm a gardener. And so I put one of your model plans into action in my yard. And I plant it and everything starts blooming and I've got nice woodies. And so what do I do next? Do I measure if I've had an impact? Do I bring some citizen scientists out to my property and have them look at the bees and identify if I've actually done anything, right? 2-3 years from now? What happens next?
That's a great question. So Pollinate Now is not a scientific study, and the pre-surveys that we did on the anchor sites and the comparisons that will be done once the plantings start growing are not going to probably be publishable quality data, but I still hope they will show us something. And if you are a homeowner who's interested in knowing what impact you actually have, yeah, there's so much opportunity. There's a huge amount of citizen science opportunity around this. We're hoping to do like a BioBlitz type thing focused on these at-risk pollinators specifically using the iNaturalist platform this summer. So one of our upcoming educational opportunities will be a bee ID training for some of these at-risk pollinators, just so that folks know what they should be looking for. And yeah, there's so much I could say about citizen science, but there's a huge amount of opportunity to see what your actions and what your gardening and what your plantings actually bring back to your backyards. And that'll be part of the toolkit that we're developing.
I mean, I know there's a program that I participated in last summer called Caterpillar Count, where you actually go, you mark your trees, and that's why people still wonder why I have tags on my trees. And you go out every week and you count the caterpillars like a crazy person, right? And there's an app. And so I assume there's going to be things like that people can use once they've actually done the planting, right? I mean, I assume there will be citizen science projects that even if they're not associated with Pollinate Now, people could take advantage of.
Yeah, there's a lot of citizen science projects out there. There's the Beecology app is one of those that's sort of an addition to iNaturalist that helps you ID the bees specifically that you're seeing. Of course, there's iNaturalist. There's Bud Break, which is a phenology app, which is something I know a lot of folks are interested in if you're doing all these native plantings, especially woodies, keeping a track of when they start to bloom each year with our weird weather swings. Eli, were you want to jump in?
I was just going to plug Beecology, and I think that app even has like a geotag function, so it shows kind of where these insects are, where they're popping up, and I think that helps inform management and science to some extent.
So we always ask, and this is kind of a silly question to ask the two of you, I think, because we always ask, or many times we'll ask, this is my pet peeve, at the end of our interviews, and maybe both of you can give us a little bit of an answer to this, is like, what gives you hope? Because a lot of times we talk about really depressing subjects like bee decline and pollinator decline and jumping worms and a horrible deer eating so what gives you hope when you walk out the door today?
That's something I struggle with a lot, but I've really been through the gauntlet of being really down about what I see happening, and especially as you educate yourself about what's growing around you and kind of what the various threats are, you can get down pretty quick, but and very overwhelming. But I really find that action is like the greatest antidote to that. And getting out there, doing active restoration, and shooting deer. I urge people who are concerned about native plants, concerned about the invasive species problems, concerned about jumping worm threats. Deer are really at the heart of what you can consider a wicked problem around biodiversity, and deer management needs to be addressed, and we can do something about that. And they taste great too.
I'm not ready to pop an antidepressant yet, so Avalon, give us something positive.
What gives me hope? I can try to out sappy Eli and say that waking up every day with a partner who is so actively engaged in taking care of the world around us and the land outside our window is my wildest dream. Pollinate Now, I think, is a very hopeful project because it's so scalable. So it gives me hope to think about actions that we can take, that anyone can take, that you don't have to have a certain set of parameters. You don't have to have, exactly 1,000 square feet of open land and perfect sun with no neighbors spraying pesticides, and you only work part-time so that you can take care of it perfectly every single day. Every action can be so impactful, and I think sometimes I personally get hung up on thinking I've got to do everything perfectly for it to be worth doing at all, but that is not how nature works, and that's not how this restoration works, and all we've got to do is start.
Just to ask one more question, and so if I'm waiting for these plants to come out and the summer's going to go by and I want to plant some things, I assume that you'd agree with kind of the maxim that if you plant a diversity of native species, if you're just going out there to plant and you don't have a plan right now, it makes sense to plant a bunch of different things that bloom at different times that are native that you think are beneficial. Is that?
Absolutely. Yeah. If I could give a couple rules of thumb for, native planting before the Taj Mahal of a Pollinate Now plan comes out and tells you exactly what you should do on every inch of perfection. Plant native is number one. And that means straight natives, increase genetic diversity, don't plant cultivars. I have cultivars in my flower beds. I don't mind them. But if you're doing restoration work, straight natives are beautiful and they'll increase the genetic diversity of your landscape. Plant, as Tim says, a diversity of flowering times. Plant a diversity of shapes, colors. The more variation you have, the happier a variety of bees will be. Another thing that was new to me and Eli through Pollinate Now, which we've mentioned a couple of times, is the importance of planting woodies. Plant habitat species. Don't just plant flowers. Shrubs are great. One of the best things you can put on your landscape, and they're very adaptable, is a willow, because those are some of the earliest flowering native species that are out there. So they'll provide really early pollen for a lot of pollinators, and they also provide great habitat. Don't think too hard about deer resistant, because the deer will eat anything. Don't worry.
I think that's great. Well, you know what? I think the two of you bring me hope because you're doing something really important and you're really passionate. And we want to hear how it goes. We want to hear the next phase. So hopefully you'll come back and talk to us once you get deeply into the project.
I would love to. Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
We've had a wonderful time talking with you and hope to be back again. I also hope to see folks, outside of any four walls. And I want to emphasize that for Pollinate Now, if you're not ready to plant or you feel like you'd like to see it done before you start, there's going to be a huge amount of volunteer opportunities and educational opportunities and field days associated just with these 4 anchor sites, including my and Eli's land that we manage. There will be opportunities to volunteer around site prep, around planting, installation, maintenance, certainly weeding. Weeding is fun. All these 4 sites across the Hudson Valley, we would love to have you get involved and see what's going on and how you can apply it to your landscape, because sometimes it's easier than just going off of a paper, be it never so beautiful. The website is climateactionhv.org/pollinate now, and you can sign up there to be involved and to be informed about all of this, and you can let us know what you're most interested in. If you're most interested in educational opportunities, volunteer opportunities, if you're a nursery owner and you want to get involved on the network side, all of that, we would love for you to hop over to that website and tell us.
I think we've covered as much as we can fit in this particular time. Thank you again so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
that concludes another episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. We would like to thank Sandra Linnell and Devin Connolly from Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene Counties for production support. And a special thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode of Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. You can find links to any of the topics mentioned in this episode at our website at ccecolumbiagreen.org. Comments and suggestions for future topics may be directed to us at columbiagreenmgb@cornell.edu or on the CCE Master Gardener Volunteers of Columbia and Greene Counties Facebook page. For more information about Cornell Cooperative Extension of Columbia and Greene Counties, visit our website at ccecolumbiagreen.org or visit us in Hudson or in Acre. Cornell Cooperative Extension provides equal programming and employment opportunities